Desperate to outshine me, my sister trapped her boyfriend into having a baby, then tried to dump it on me when she couldn't handle it. Last year, I married my long-term lover, Dexter, who is 29 years old. We dated for 6 years before getting married. Our romance began in college, when we met through mutual acquaintances at a school function. Dexter was studying engineering while I was seeking a degree in business administration. We quickly clicked and have been inseparable since. For background, my younger sister, Arya, a 24-year-old female, has always been competitive with me since childhood. Whatever I accomplished or desired, she had to complete it first or better. This behavior began when we were very little. When I was 7 and started ballet classes, 3-year-old Arya hurled tantrums until our parents enrolled her as well. When I joined the school basketball team in 8th grade, she suddenly gained an interest in basketball and joined, although having never shown any interest in sports previously. When I first started learning piano at the age of 15, she insisted on taking lessons and practicing extra hours in order to outperform me at the annual recital. This tendency persisted throughout high school. When I received consecutive A's in my sophomore year, Arya studied tirelessly until she received straight A's with extra credit in all of her classes. When I was accepted to the state university with a partial scholarship, she worked herself to the bone to get into an Ivy League institution with a larger scholarship. Our parents constantly encouraged this behavior, viewing Arya as the perfect child who could do no wrong. When we were kids, whenever I grumbled about Arya mimicking everything I did, my parents would tell me to be proud that my younger sister looked up to me so much. As we grew older, they constantly praised her for everything, whereas my accomplishments were sometimes neglected or dismissed as usual. They spent thousands on her Ivy League education, whereas I had to work part-time to help pay for my public university tuition. When I started dating Dexter in college, Arya quickly learned about him through social networking. Within months, she began dating his younger brother, Kenneth, 26M, and it felt as if she was attempting to replicate my life yet again. Kenneth was still in his senior year of high school, and the relationship appeared forced from the start, but our parents thought it was wonderful that the sisters were dating brothers. Dexter and I developed a strong relationship throughout the years. We helped each other get through college, our first jobs, and the challenges of early adulthood. When we moved in together after graduation, our parents disapproved, claiming we were living in sin, but when Arya moved in with Kenneth just after graduating from high school, they deemed it romantic. Last year, my grandparents were ecstatic when Dexter and I announced our engagement. They had been expecting their first great-grandchild, and everyone assumed we would be the ones to bring them joy because we were getting married. My grandmother even gave me her antique cradle, hoping to fill it soon. This bothered Arya. She couldn't bear the fact that I was receiving all of the attention for once. Arya repeatedly attempted to overshadow us as we were arranging our wedding. She urged Kenneth to propose, but he was not prepared. She suggested a double wedding, which we categorically declined. She even tried to wear white to our wedding, but our grandmother said no. Arya announced her pregnancy 2 months after our wedding, during a family Sunday supper. Kenneth appeared surprised and uneasy throughout the announcement, nearly dropping his fork when she uttered it. We then learned from mutual acquaintances that Arya had gotten pregnant on purpose without first discussing it with Kenneth. She had stopped using birth control without telling him so that she may have the family's first grandchild. My parents were pleased to become grandparents. They entirely forgot about our recent wedding and instead focused on Arya's pregnancy. Every family event revolved around her baby shower plans or nursery ideas. My mother spent hours shopping for baby clothes, while my father began putting up a college fund for the baby. My grandmother's antique cradle, which she had given me, was unexpectedly moved to Arya's apartment because she needed it more. Kenneth told Dexter on a brother's night out that he wasn't ready to be a father. He had just begun his profession in IT and wanted to concentrate on it first. He felt confined and exploited, but he didn't know how to express it without sounding like a nasty guy. Arya duped him into staying by claiming that their baby needed both parents. She even moved in with him at his parents' house, claiming they needed to begin living as a family. The main issue arose after the baby was born. Arya immediately discovered that having a kid was more than just garnering attention and posting lovely images on social media. She struggled with the most basic tasks, such as changing diapers or getting up for night feeds. Kenneth did his best, but he was equally unprepared. They both began to show signs of being overwhelmed. Arya would phone her mother at 3 a.m., wailing about how difficult things were, and Kenneth began staying late at work to avoid returning home. Last week, my folks invited Dexter and me to dinner. We assumed it was just an ordinary family dinner, but we were mistaken. They also invited Dexter's parents, which should have been our first red sign. As soon as we sat down, my mother began discussing how anxious Arya was with the baby. She added that Arya needed time to figure out her life and work, and that having a baby was making things more difficult. She discussed how Arya's mental health was deteriorating and how she needed a break. Then came the startling part. My parents proposed that because Dexter and I were stable, mature, and had been married longer, we should adopt the baby and raise it as our own. Here's your corrected version, with the timeline deleted and proper punctuation applied while the tale remains intact. They said that this way, we wouldn't have to try for our own child, and Arya could focus on her life. I was speechless. They were asking us to take on someone else's child since the genuine parents were unprepared for the responsibilities they had willingly taken on. Now, both of our families are urging us to reconsider. They keep accusing us of being heartless for not assisting Arya when she needs us, but Dexter and I refuse to be manipulated into accepting a responsibility that is not ours. We did not ask Arya to become pregnant, and we certainly did not ask her to use her pregnancy to attract attention. This is not a pet, it's a human. You can't simply hand over your child because parenting turned out to be more difficult than you anticipated. The situation has worsened since my previous post. Yesterday, Arya and my mother arrived at my workplace during lunch. I work at a marketing agency in the city, and they somehow learned about my lunch schedule. They confronted me in the parking lot as I was walking to my car to get lunch, demanding that I listen to their pitch. As soon as they approached me, I realized this was no ordinary visit. Arya looked like she hadn't slept in days, with heavy bags beneath her eyes. She began crying about how she and Kenneth were not prepared for fatherhood and needed more time to think things out. She kept stating she felt confined and overwhelmed, and she never expected parenthood to be so difficult. My mother then announced the new strategy. They suggested Dexter and I take the infant for a 6-month trial term. If things did not work out, they would seek another solution. According to them, this would give Arya and Kenneth time to organize their life while also ensuring the baby's well-being. They had even prepared a temporary custody agreement, which they took from their purse in the parking lot. When I declined again, Arya got frantic. She yelled that I was wrecking her life and that if I truly loved her, I would help her. She accused me of being selfish and vindictive, claiming that I refused to just punish her. Several of my co-workers, who were also on lunch break, paused to look at the scene she was creating. My mother took a different approach. She mentioned how I had always desired children and offered that perhaps this was God's plan, and that I was destined to raise Arya's child rather than having my own. She stated that blessings can come in unexpected ways, and that this could be our chance at parenthood. The boldness of her words made my blood boil. I asked them both to leave before calling security. Later that evening, they arrived at our place alongside Kenneth's parents. They had clearly prepared this ambush with the intention of putting pressure on us if everyone gathered together. Fortunately, Dexter was home. When they resumed their emotional manipulation, he forcefully requested them to leave. They resisted, insisting they would not leave unless we agreed to their demands. Kenneth's mother began crying about how her son's life was being ruined, as if he had no role in causing the issue. My mother joined in, explaining that Arya was suffering from postpartum depression and needed help. They made it appear as if stealing their infant was the only way to help her, utterly disregarding the availability of true medical and psychiatric assistance. That is when Arya dropped the bombshell. She and Kenneth had already booked flights to Europe. They intended to leave the baby with us, whether we approved or not. She reasoned that if they simply abandoned the baby, we'd be forced to care for it. She even had a plan in place: they'd drop off the baby for babysitting and then catch their flight, leaving us with no choice but to step up. I was stunned by her selfishness and informed her that if she abandoned her infant, I would contact CPS. I made it plain that child abandoning was a felony, and I would not hesitate to denounce them if they followed through on their plan. This menace appeared to shake everyone. My mother began urging us not to inform the authorities, claiming that doing so would ruin Arya's life and future professional chances. Kenneth's parents jumped in, offering to enhance Dexter's inheritance if we agreed. They also promised to purchase us a larger house and a new car if we took the baby. But we remained firm. We ordered everyone to leave or we'd contact the cops for trespassing. Their shocked expressions when they discovered we were serious were almost hilarious. They couldn't believe we wouldn't succumb to their deception. Before departing, Arya made one final attempt to guilt-trip me. She brought up all the times I had expressed my desire to be a mother, how I had always loved children, and how this could be my only opportunity at motherhood. She even implied that my refusal meant I didn't want to be a mother at all. I told her that wanting to be a mother did not imply that I wanted to tolerate her irresponsible behavior. I reminded her that she was the one who chose to become pregnant without thinking things through, and now she had to face the repercussions of her choices. They eventually left, but not before my mother told us that we would regret our decision. She remarked that the family should support the family, but we chose to be harsh instead. Kenneth's father made it clear again that this would have an impact on our position in his will. After they went, Dexter and I sat down and had a lengthy conversation. We decided that we needed to take precautions to protect ourselves from future ambushes. We're looking into installing security cameras in our home, and I've told my workplace security about prospective undesirable guests. The whole affair has demonstrated how far our family would go to impose their wishes on us. It is apparent that they do not respect our limits or our right to make our own choices. We are considering legal action if they continue to harass us. After the parking lot event and the ambush at our house, I decided to speak with my grandfather. He has always been our family's voice of reason, and I needed his viewpoint. I waited until I was certain he would be alone, as my grandma typically has her bridge club on Wednesday afternoons. I paid him a visit at his home and brought him his favorite lemon cake from a nearby bakery. When I arrived, I found him in his study, reading the newspaper like he normally does after lunch. He grinned when he saw me, but his countenance darkened when he noticed my sadness. I sat in the old leather chair across from him, the same one I used to sit in when I visited Dad after school as a child. I told him everything from the start, including Arya's planned pregnancy, her incapacity to handle motherhood, and our parents' ludicrous insistence that we take her kid. I described the ambush at my office and their attempt to coerce us into taking the baby by threatening to abandon it alongside us. As I spoke, I noticed his countenance shift from concern to rage. To my astonishment, he already knew some of the narrative, but not the entire truth. My parents had told him a completely different scenario. According to them, Dexter and I offered to adopt the infant, but then abruptly changed our minds, leaving Arya devastated. They had depicted us as criminals who refused to help needy families, portraying Arya as the victim of our brutality. Grandfather was enraged when he learned the true tale. He couldn't believe his own daughter, my mother, was attempting to force her older daughter to raise her younger daughter's child. He was especially upset about Arya's plan to dump the kid with us and flee to Europe. He continued shaking his head, murmuring that this was not how he and grandmother had reared their children. He quickly called my grandma, despite the fact that she was at her bridge club. He rarely interrupted her social activities, indicating how serious he took the problem. When she got home, he asked me to tell her everything again. By the end of my anecdote, both of them were clearly upset. They all agreed that the situation had gone too far. Grandfather stated that he had witnessed over the years as my parents regularly preferred Arya, but he thought they would grow out of it. Now he knew their partiality had caused this disaster by allowing Arya's irresponsible behavior while expecting me to clean up after her. That's when Grandfather made an unexpected proposal. He owns several properties, including a lovely property in a quiet neighborhood approximately an hour distant from our current residence. The house had been rented out for years, but the current tenants had recently moved out. He offered to give it to us, stating we needed to get away from this toxic circumstance. At first, I attempted to resist. The mansion was worth at least $500,000, which seemed like too much to accept. Grandfather insisted. He explained that he had meant to leave it to me in his will anyhow, and that giving it to us now would allow us to escape this terrible circumstance. My granny agreed with him. She stated that sometimes the best way to deal with poisonous family relationships is to establish physical space. She also mentioned that the house would offer us the freedom to start our own families when we were ready, without interference from either set of parents. They had their lawyer draft the paperwork the very following day. The house was transferred to our names on the condition that we not sell it for at least 5 years, not that we wanted to. Grandfather explained that this restriction was put in place to prevent our parents from pressuring us into selling it and handing the proceeds to Arya. When I arrived home that evening and told Dexter about my grandparents' offer, he was taken aback. He had always gotten along well with my grandparents, but this level of support was surprising. We spent the night talking about the offer and what it meant for us. Moving an hour away would result in lengthier trips to work, but the serenity and distance felt worthwhile. We agreed to accept my grandparents' generous offer. The house required some minor improvements before we could move in, but Grandfather promised to cover those costs as well. He stated that he wanted us to have a fresh start, free of the drama and manipulation we had been dealing with. It's been 3 months since we moved into the home my grandfather gave us. The distance has greatly aided in retaining our sanity. The first thing we did after moving was change our phone numbers and only give the new ones to my grandparents and a few close friends. We also constructed a comprehensive security system with cameras in case somebody tried to turn up unexpectedly. The house has been our retreat. We spent the first month repainting and making it our own. Dexter transformed one of the spare rooms into his home office, while I converted another into a library, something I'd always desired. The spacious backyard allows us to plant and relax away from the drama we left behind. Arya and Kenneth never been to Europe. When they realized we were serious about calling CPS, they had no choice but to step forward as parents. According to common acquaintances, they are finally taking parenting classes and looking for childcare aid. Kenneth's parents stopped threatening us with the inheritance when they knew we wouldn't change our views. My mother still tries to contact us through mutual connections. She sends messages accusing us of being juvenile for moving away and splitting up the family. She even tried to contact me using my work email account, but happily, my firm respects employee privacy. Last week, she sent a letter to one of my relatives, alleging that Arya was depressed as a result of our actions and that we were cruel for not assisting her. My father has not attempted to contact us directly, but he has been telling everyone who would listen that we abandoned the family when they needed us the most. He's attempting to portray us as the villains in this story, but most people who know the real picture understand why we needed to separate ourselves. My grandparents have been our staunchest supports throughout this. They make regular visits to our new house and have made it obvious to everyone that they support our decision. Grandmother even advised my mother to cease contacting us until she could respect our boundaries. This sparked a massive dispute between them, but my grandmother remained steadfast. Dexter's parents later apologized for their attempt to deceive us with the inheritance threat. They issued us a letter admitting that they were wrong to try to force us to take Arya's kid. However, we are still maintaining our distance. One apology cannot undo months of manipulation and pressure. The entire experience has taught us who genuinely cares about our well-being and who simply wants to use us to solve their problems. We are finally at peace with our decision and are excited to start our own family when we are ready, on our own terms. Last week, we learned that Arya and Kenneth are finally going to couples counseling and parenting classes. While we're delighted they're getting help, we don't intend to reconnect anytime soon. Trust has been broken, and rebuilding it will need more than a few months of excellent behavior. For the time being, we are content with our newfound tranquility. We've established friends in our new neighborhood, joined a communal garden, and hope to acquire a puppy. Sometimes the greatest approach to deal with toxic family relationships is to create enough space to pursue your own pleasure. That is precisely what we are doing, and we have no misgivings about our decision.
Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.